The craziest moments in comics sometimes come in the form of our morally just superheroes losing their cool and just showing us how powerful they really are. I think it's a well-known fact that Spider-Man pulls his punches. It's part of the reason he is one of the best heroes, because he does everything he does while also holding back. But I always forget how much he actually pulls those punches. For example, in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 270, a black-suited Spider-Man puts one hell of a beating on a former Herald of Galactus, Firelord. Previously, Firelord had been wandering the cosmos when he stopped into New York to enjoy the culture, only to be attacked by firemen, and then kicked in the face by Spider-Man. Now, the Lord of Fire wants his revenge. After leading Firelord on a merry chase through office buildings, Grand Central Station, the subway system, into a construction zone, having a building demolished on top of them, and then leading him to a gas station which then explodes, Spider-Man, at his wit's end, musters all his effort and his spider sense to lay an incredible beatdown of speed, agility, and raw strength on Firelord, getting lost in his bloodlust until Captain America and the Avengers show up to be like, dude, you got him! Chill. Number 9, Firestorm v Parasite. Rudolph Jones found himself exposed to a strange form of radiation which changed him into the bald, green-skinned parasite with the ability to absorb the life energy of others. In Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, issue number 86, Parasite is released from an area he is being held in and goes on a rampage, draining multiple people of their life energy, including Firehawk, who fell pretty easily to this villain. Luckily, the hero Firestorm is nearby. Now at this point in time, Firestorm has become the world's fire elemental, and received a pretty significant power boost. Almost as if to prove that fact, Firestorm comes in hot on Parasite with a blast of flame, and then when Parasite tries to drain Firestorm's power, the hero is unaffected as he says, "My powers come not from myself, but from the earth. I don't have power, I am power." And in a last-ditch effort, Parasite decides to try and trade energy blasts with Firestorm. Unfortunately for Parasite, it is nowhere near an equal fight. He uses up all the energy he took from Firestorm, and then just trying to hold back Firestorm's blast, Parasite goes through his own reserved life energy until he is on the brink. Realizing he will lose, he begs Firestorm to stop, saying that Firestorm would bring the end for Parasite, to which Firestorm simply says, "That was my intention." Luckily for him, Parasite was saved by the allies of Firestorm, who told him to just stop, but this hero left Parasite emaciated from using up his own energy. Number 8, Batman vs. Thugs. Have you ever played the Batman Arkham games? The combat in those games is absolutely fantastic, but it still leaves me wondering how many of these random street thugs actually survive after their interaction with Batman. He hits hard, and he is pretty unforgiving about it, which serves his whole point of instilling fear. But I think because these nameless thugs are cannon fodder, they essentially get the worst beatings of most of Batman's villains, and we never hear from most of them again. That kind of tells you all you need to know. Now, as an example, let's talk about a group of thugs in the All-Star Batman and Robin series, issue 7. Now, this comic is written by Frank Miller, who seems to be able to get away with making Batman do pretty much anything. Like in the opening pages of the issue, Batman comes speeding into a group of armed thugs, foot first, maniacally laughing like the Joker, talking in his head about how Gotham is full of cockroaches. He relishes the fact that criminals are scared that they are disposing of each other accidentally. Then he sets fire to a bottle of bleach and tosses it onto the criminals, blanketing them in fire. And then he continues beating the snot out of them while they're on fire. And then what happens next? I don't really know how to explain this, but Black Canary pops up out of nowhere, and these two superheroes just start making out and getting busy while the thugs are barbecuing in the background. Unfortunately, yes, this is Batman, and it's scary. Number 7, Zombie Peter Parker. In Marvel Zombies number 2, Zombie Peter Parker and Luke Cage leave the group of cosmically superpowered zombies and, regaining their good guy nature, try to protect what's left of humanity on Earth. But they unfortunately get teleported to a different reality by Malcolm Cortez's son. In Marvel Zombies Returns, the zombie heroes end up on Earth 91126. Zombie Spider-Man thinks he can cure their zombie virus by finding the Lifeline tablet, but just as he is getting underway with the plan, he gets distracted and forced into a fight with Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, Vulture, Kraven, and Sandman, aka the Sinister Six. Despite trying his best to hold back his hunger, Spider-Man cannot resist Kraven's smell and ends up attacking him, biting into his neck. Mysterio tries using illusions, but Spider-Man's senses help him locate and dispose of Mysterio. Electro and Dr. Octopus try to attack Spider-Man together, but this just puts them in positions to hurt each other instead, with Electro using up most of his power, and Dr. Octopus left electrically deep-fried for Spider-Man to eat. As they realize this is not going too well, the remaining villains try to hightail it out of there, but before Vulture can escape, Spider-Man rips off his wings and uses them to finish off Electro before he can shoot more electricity at him. Only Sandman manages to escape from the chaos, going to attack this universe's Spider-Man for this utterly sickening display of violence. Number 6, Wally West v. Inertia. Inertia was a young villainous Thaddeus Thawne. Inertia is to Bart Allen, aka Impulse, what Eobard Thawne is to Barry Allen. He is his reverse. Now, Inertia had been raised his whole life to absolutely despise speedsters of any kind. He learned to be a villain from others, but his actions were all his own. So, when Inertia made the mistake of taking the life of his opposite, Bart Allen, he would be made to suffer the consequences. Unfortunately for him, those consequences came in the form of Wally West, one of the most powerful speedsters ever. After taunting Wally about the fact that he just took the life of his sidekick, in All Flash #1, Wally takes the young villain who had the potential to be reformed and removes his ability to move at all. He traps Inertia in a museum as one of the exhibits, only able to blink once every 100 years. And he leaves the kid there still thinking in real time during all of this, meaning he's driven slowly and very assuredly insane. And just as the cherry on top, Wally left him facing the exhibit of Bart Allen, the man that Inertia could have been. It's an incredibly dark fate for a hero to impose on a villain, especially one who's like a sidekick. Number 5, Midnighter vs. Commander. The Authority is a really cool group from DC Comics' Wildstorm universe. The two most well-known heroes from the team would be Apollo and Midnighter, who are basically like Superman and Batman respectively, only these two are husband and husband, and Midnighter is almost insane. He is like Batman, but like Batman who is also mixed with the Punisher and maybe a little bit of like Deadpool, I think? And these stories get dark. In Mark Millar's run on the Authority, a villain by the name of Commander makes the very big mistake of attacking and forcing himself on Apollo. This was a hell of a mistake. In response to those actions, Apollo, after recovering, burns Commander's legs so that he cannot escape, and Midnighter shows up with a jackhammer, and the rest is something we are kept from seeing, thankfully. If you want to check it out for yourself, you may be my guest, but you've been warned, it's quite haunting. Number 4, Black Panther and the Skrulls. Wakanda, like the other fictional kingdoms of Atlantis and Latveria, is protected by a man who will do pretty much anything to protect his people. T'Challa doesn't really have the luxury of sparing those that would do harm to his incredibly advanced home. But Wakanda is also one of the #1 places targeted when an invading force wants to take over Earth. So, taking those two facts into account, when the Skrulls tried to invade Wakanda to start their mission of dominating the world, T'Challa, the king of one of the most advanced nations in said world, and his wife, Storm of the X-Men, one of the most powerful mutants alive, left those aliens with a clear message. After tricking the Skrulls into attacking their own men for information, the Skrulls send out their best warriors for the task of taking down the pair. But just as those toughest warriors are gone from sight, an army of Wakandan soldiers breaks into the Skrull ship and leaves not a single Skrull soul alive. While that's happening, those toughest warriors are turned into pulp by Black Panther, with T'Challa using their bodily fluids to write, "This is what happens when you invade Wakanda," on the bridge of the Skrull ship. Damn. Number 3, One Rule. Batman Hush could in its entirety be seen as a brutal moment. It strikes at the childhood life of Bruce Wayne himself, pushing Batman to a point we rarely ever see. In Batman issue number 614, right smack dab in the middle of the Hush story arc, Tommy Elliott, the childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, loses his life at what seems to be the hands of the Joker. All the years and years of distress caused by the Joker, the people he hurt, the lives lost, they all fuel this rage inside of Bruce Wayne, who begins to lay a spectacular beatdown on the Joker, knocking out both Harley Quinn and even Catwoman, who both try to stop him. Batman almost goes to the point of permanently bringing an end to the Joker, beginning to put aside his morals to finally be rid of this homicidal plague on Gotham City. It's not until Jim Gordon intervenes while Batman has his gloves around the Joker's neck that the Dark Knight finally relents. The worst part about this, though, is that if Batman did go through with it, the Joker wasn't even the one responsible for the crime in the first place. Number 2, Captain America. We love Civil War. Not the actual Civil War, the Marvel one. So many great examples of superheroes fighting other superheroes, but the main star of the show in this conflict is Iron Man versus Captain America. And while the climactic fight ultimately ended in a Captain America favored draw, I'd say the first major fight was definitely more of a win for Tony Stark. In issue number 3 and 4 of the main Civil War comic, a battle takes place between the forces of both Cap and Stark. While Steve is fighting Spider-Man, Iron Man comes swooping in, attacking with an armor that's analyzed every punch Cap has ever thrown, and he just starts going to town on this guy, feeding him the left right until Cap is absolutely battered. Cap still doesn't go down, so Tony uses a high frequency that shuts down the human brain. He's about to end the fight when Hercules jumps in, attacking with an oil tanker truck, which definitely would do some damage. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Sentry ripping Ares in half. The Sentry is a character that deserves more spotlight. Problem is, he's kind of one of the most powerful superheroes Marvel has. Obviously, that's debatable, but this guy has the power to destroy pretty much anybody in the Marvel universe. He has reassembled his own molecules and taken out the Molecule Man, for example. He's almost too powerful to include in a lot of stories, but it's the fight between the Sentry and Ares, the literal god of war, in issue 2 of Marvel's Siege event that really left people slack-jawed and looking for emotional support. Ares in this story started on the Dark Avengers before redeeming himself and joining the good guys. He had been showing how awesome he is, and he turns his sights on Norman Osborn, which unfortunately means that Ares now has to face his friend, the Sentry. Sentry punches Ares halfway across Asgard, and maybe 2 or 3 punches later, he grabs both ends of the God of War and rips him completely in half. Not only did it leave everyone on the page frozen, it also left readers completely stunned.
Number 10, Werewolf by Night. One of the first appearances of Moon Knight actually involved a 2-part fight with none other than Werewolf by Night. What a brutal introduction to the Marvel Universe. This fight turned team-up took place in Werewolf by Night issue 32 and issue 33 in the 1972 series, the first series of Werewolf by Night. Here Moon Knight made quick work of Werewolf by Night, not just tormenting him with punches, but also with scathing insults besides. How rude. However, while Werewolf by Night appeared to be no match for Moon Knight, in the end the hero decided to lay down his arms, realizing that Werewolf by Night wasn't the villain he'd thought he was, and the two instead decided to team up to take on a common enemy that had actually turned Moon Knight against Werewolf by Night in the first place. Number 9, Midnight. Although Midnight would go on to become a villain in the comics, originally he was actually simply the son of a villain who wanted to become a hero himself. Midnight is Jeff Wild, the son of Midnight Man. Moon Knight fought against and defeated Midnight Man, and Jeff ended up confronting Moon Knight as a result. But in the end, Jeff decides to actually work with his father's enemy, wanting to become a hero like Moon Knight, and ending up as his sidekick for a time, until he appeared to be disintegrated by number 7 of the Secret Empire. Not to be confused with the Marvel event Secret Empire. This is a group, not an event. Midnight, however, would return and end up fighting Moon Knight, Spider-Man, and a team of heroes, wanting revenge on his former partner who he believed had abandoned him after his supposed death. Of course, Moon Knight probably just thought he was dead, but you know how it is when you're not actually dead, and you're like, you should have known that I wasn't really dead, man, even though it looked like I was disintegrated. This version of Midnight was a cyborg who had also been trained by and kind of brainwashed into joining the Empire. In the end, Midnight was defeated by Moon Knight with some pretty vital help from Spider-Man, and the convenient assist of Empire's headquarters collapsing. Yay. Although I don't think that was the end of Midnight. I think Midnight may have even come back after that, but yes, don't quote me. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, just a quick reminder, if you are loving Moon Knight and you want to learn even more about him, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Then we can give you more Moon Knight lists. Number 8, Darkhawk. In the Infinity War event, Moon Knight got to take on a slew of evil doppelgangers of heroes, including Darkhawk. A lot of these fights are short, but it's neat to see Moon Knight take on so many alternate versions of Marvel superheroes at once. For those not familiar, Darkhawk is Chris Powell, once a teen who stumbled upon a mysterious amulet and was forever changed by it, becoming the hero Darkhawk. The amulet allows Chris to swap his consciousness with that of the Darkhawk android, Shi'ar tech melded with magic, which comes with super strength, speed, durability, flight, a form of self-healing, concussive blasts, and more. In the end, Darkhawk proved no match for Moon Knight, who made quick work of him by smacking him with his adamantium staff, or truncheon if you will. That's what he prefers to call it, truncheon. I think I'm saying that right too. It's not trunch eon, is it? Probably not. I've never used a truncheon myself, but that's just based on how it's written, I'm assuming. Number 7. Daredevil. Daredevil and Moon Knight have fought one another in a team up where Moon Knight came out on top thanks to the bombardment of loud noises and his adamantium truncheon before deciding to work together. But he's also squared off with Daredevil's evil doppelganger as well in his Infinity War tie-in. Here Moon Knight has some help from other heroes, but also ends up being the one to take down evil Dop DD, as well as a whole slew of others who gang up on him in the end. Though thankfully he is shortly thereafter joined by some reinforcements as other heroic colleagues show up to help with basically the army of evil doppelgangers that are wreaking all kinds of havoc still. These doppelgangers, they never end, they're endless. Number 6. Black Knight. Another evil doppelganger that Moon Knight comes up against during the Infinity War tie-in is Black Knight. Now granted, this isn't the real Black Knight, but it is a version of him. Black Knight and Moon Knight squaring off is also something that is just neat to see because they're both kind of like opposing knights in terms of design at least. Black Knight is a medieval inspired knight dressed all in dark, Dane Whitman, who typically fights with the ebony blade, and Moon Knight is an Egyptian inspired mummy looking dude dressed all in white and here fighting with his adamantium staff. Though Moon Knight fights with a slew of different weapons as well in the comics. Number 5. Deadpool. Wade Wilson is known for being pretty unstoppable with his healing factor and his rad merc moves, but not so unstoppable that Moon Knight can't stop him. These two duke it out as a result of a misunderstanding in Vengeance of Moon Knight issue number 7 and fought once more in the next issue over a difference of vigilante ideologies in issue number 8. Moon Knight both times makes pretty quick work of Deadpool, not being able to fully kill him of course because of his healing factor, which is kinda just what Moon Knight wanted and needed anyway in this fight. Someone he could go all out on without the fear of killing them. So it's kind of a perfect match. The other thing that makes these two going head to head so interesting is the fact that they both have their own mental health issues and both are known for hearing and talking to voices in their head, which makes for some pretty cool moments and pretty fun dialogue. As different as Deadpool and Moon Knight are, they share a lot of similarities as well. There's a lot of like neat overlap there even though they're very different. Different but similar. Number 4. Beast. During his Infinity War tie-in, Mark Spector Moon Knight issue number 43, Moon Knight also faces off against an evil doppelganger of Beast, aka Hank McCoy. The battle ends up being more tricky than when he faced Black Knight. Moon Knight actually has to employ some quick thinking to beat Hank's evil alternate, and it seems that both are evenly matched momentarily, with both applying lessons they are learning about one another in battle to their tactics. However, in the end, Moon Knight manages to out-strategize even the evil version of one of the most intelligent X-Men members. After Moon Knight defeats Beast's evil counterpart, Hank himself congratulates him for his quick thinking, complimenting his style. Real Hank, not a evil Hank, just to be clear. Number 3. Black Panther. Well, really, Moon Knight survived a fight with Black Panther, but just as it seemed he was defeated, he did get back up and end up with the Phoenix Force merged to him, so I think we can call that a win for Moon Knight. If a fight ends with you getting an insane level of power like the Phoenix Force, you're winning, at least in the long run in my mind, even if you had to take a smackdown on your way to getting said power. These two duke it out in issue number 36 of the 2018 Avengers series, which I believe is considered volume 7. Moon Knight seems convinced that Black Panther is not himself, but is actually Mephisto, and fights against his Wakandan teched-out suit, as well as Black Panther's own fighting skills, prowess, and power behind said suit. In the end, Black Panther ends up knocking him to the ground, but decides not to end Moon Knight. Knight. However, Moon Knight is then still able to finish his prayer and is rewarded with the Phoenix Force, which bonds with him, making him nigh invincible. Number 2. Spider-Man. Moon Knight ends up facing off against Spider-Man after mistakenly believing he was the one responsible for a building being blown up. In truth, it wasn't Spidey behind the explosion, but the two still ended up duking it out on a rooftop. This happened not in the main continuity, but in the reality of Earth 1610, with 1610 Peter and 1610 Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight. While Spider-Man proved to be a pretty powerful opponent for Moon Knight, in the end Spider-Man still decided to run away rather than continue to fight the vigilantes, so I think we can consider that a win for Moon Knight. I feel like he scared Spider-Man enough that he was like, why am I even still staying here? I'm just gonna get out of here. I'm not gonna fight you. You're nuts. Number 1. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel is handily defeated by Moon Knight during the same story that Black Panther squares off with him in The Age of Khonshu. In issue number 35 of the 2018 Avengers series, he approaches Iron Man and Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, attempting to take the baby star brand, Brandy Selby, from them, as Khonshu needs her power. Catching Carol off guard, Moon Knight is able to restrain her quickly and then tosses her in the trunk of Ghost Rider, aka Robbie Reyes' car, which he also has access to after taking Ghost Rider's powers. Carol is wrapped up in chains and also has to deal with what appears to be a tentacle monster in the trunk. Although she does escape, she ends up flying away, choosing to run, or rather fly, from Moon Knight than face him. Of course, she takes Tony and Baby Starbrand with her so they can regroup, but I'd still call making someone as powerful as Captain Marvel retreat a win for Moon Knight here. Granted, he is a very OP Moon Knight at this point in the story, because he's already beaten a lot of other heroes too. Which is why we should maybe do a part 2 to this list, because there's some that I didn't get to mention.
At number 10 is Peter versus Kingpin in Back in Black. The clash between Kingpin illuminated a different facet of the web-slinger's character, notably during the Civil War arc in Marvel Comics. You see, with Aunt May's life hanging in the balance due to Kingpin's orchestration, Peter found himself pushed beyond his usual moral thresholds. Striking a severe blow to the crime lord within the confines of a prison, Peter chose not to extinguish Kingpin's life. Instead, he dealt a far more nuanced form of retribution. During his relentless beating, Peter publicly stripped the Kingpin of his aura of invincibility and dominance. This action, more than physical harm, wounded the villain's pride and ego. It was an exhibition of psychological warfare, revealing that the most impactful defeat can occur within the realms of perception and identity rather than the purely physical. But don't get me wrong, it really got physical. The message conveyed was profound. By choosing not to end Kingpin's life, Spider-Man opted for a fate some might deem more excruciating. The knowledge of being bested in front of his peers, stripping away his veneer of invulnerability. This act underscored the poignant and strategic intellect behind Spider-Man's mask, elevating the battle beyond the realm of physical conflict due to the psychological. At number 9 is Conquest versus Invincible. The showdown between Invincible and Conquest isn't merely a clash of titans. It's a profound exploration of the moral compass and the repercussions of power unshackled. Mark Grayson, aka Invincible, typically represents the epitome of heroism, symbolizing hope and self-sacrifice. However, his confrontation with Conquest uncovers a darker side, questioning the fine line of valor and ruthlessness. On the other end stands Conquest, a paragon of unbridled might, showcasing power devoid of restraint. This clash isn't just a battle of fists, but an introspective journey into the ethical quandaries that arise when power goes unconstrained. Now, what forced Invincible into this frenzy was the fact that Conquest didn't hold back from basically unaliving his girlfriend Adam Eve by sticking his hand through her stomach. So if there's anything that's gonna make Mark Grayson go off the decent with unadulterated brutality, it's probably that. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Thor versus Iron Man. The clash between Thor and Iron Man in Thor number 3 wasn't just a showdown of super strength, but a clash of ideologies too. You see, Thor is typically known for his nobility and restraint, but in this instance, he unleashed his full fury against Tony Stark, who had previously created a grotesque clone in Thor's name. It wasn't just about physical combat, it was a statement. Thor's response to Stark's arrogance was immediate and intense, shrugging off repulsor blasts and delivering a relentless lightning strike. What's striking here, pun intended, is Thor's refusal to hold back, a departure from his usual demeanor. With the colossal thunderbolt, he practically pries Iron Man's armor, asserting his divine might over Stark's technology. Holding Tony helpless, he delivers a decisive message about power and bravery, making it clear that he doesn't bend to orders or intimidation. The clash isn't merely a physical battle, but a demonstration of the disparity between godly might and human innovation. It's a powerful moment where Thor sets the record straight and leaves Iron Man to contemplate his actions on a walk of shame in his battered armor. At number 7 is Billy Bishop versus Payback. In The Boys issue number 32, we delve into a brutal showdown between Billy Butcher and the superhero team Payback. The stakes soar as Butcher, leading the boys, finds himself in a perilous situation against these powerful adversaries in a 5-on-1 tussle. But what ensues is a raw display of Butcher's unwavering resolve and resourcefulness. In the heart of the conflict, Butcher orchestrates his defense in a grim and calculated manner. His cutting tactics include using shards of glass as a weapon against Stormfront, exploiting unconventional tools such as a pickaxe and a shovel to incapacitate his foes. The furiosity of his attacks leaves Payback reeling, demonstrating Butcher's unrelenting and unforgiving approach to achieve his objectives. Through the confrontation, Butcher's tenacity is a stark contrast to the superhuman abilities of his adversaries. It's a testament to his resilience and the unyielding determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The clash here culminates with the cliffhanger, leaving the fate of Soldier Boy hanging, while Butcher, true to his namesake, displays an unapologetically intense and dominating exhibition of power. At number 6 is Hyperion. Hyperion's takedown of Galactus in Heroes Reborn number 2 is a significant departure from the standard superhero playbook. See, Hyperion's backstory is crucial here. He's driven by a deep-seated desire for revenge because Galactus, the cosmic devourer, not only destroyed his home planet, but also wiped out his entire family. So when Galactus comes sniffing around Earth looking for his next cosmic meal, Hyperion just isn't having it. He doesn't waste time or energy seeking a non-lethal solution like Superman might. Instead, he acts on his seething anger and immediate need for justice. This move starkly contrasts the moral and ethical approach we typically see from characters based on the likes of Superman. It's a bold illustration of how personal history and motivations can shape a hero's actions in a supercharged moment. This kind of storytelling adds depth and complexity to these larger-than-life characters, painting them in shades of gray rather than simple black and white. At number 5 is Ultimate Captain America versus Giant Man. Every now and then we get a glimpse of the heroes, the so-called good guys, throwing away the rulebook and going all out. This brings us to a gripping encounter between Ultimate Captain America and Giant Man, a battle that transcends the conventional hero versus villain narrative. The scenario unfolds when Cap, tasked with detaining Hank Pym due to his problematic behavior as a spouse, takes matters into his own hands. Cap doesn't hold back. He initiates the encounter by getting physical with Hank, provoking him to escalate the situation by using his ability to grow to massive proportions. Seemingly leveling the playing field, Hank makes himself massive, thinking it's now a fair fight. However, Cap, being the tactician he is, finds an unexpected advantage in the oversized form of Giant Man, and it's not pretty. With Hank now very vulnerable due to his enlarged size, Cap seizes the opportunity and strikes where it hurts most, delivering a blow to Giant Man's most sensitive area. The skirmish turns brutal. Just when it seems like the conflict is drawing to a close, with Giant Man subdued, the cavalry arrives. But before Cap wraps up, he delivers a final taunting verbal jab, encapsulating the brutal nature of the fight. How big do you feel now? At number 4 is Deadpool versus everybody. In the twisted saga of Deadpool Eliminate the Marvel Universe, Wade Wilson, our favorite merc with the mouth, takes his anti-hero antics to a whole new level. Deadpool, fully conscious of his existence within a comic book, decides to liberate his fellow characters from their fictional suffering by wiping them out of existence. His methods, well, they're a mix of twisted creativity and brutal efficiency. From the Avengers to the formidable Wolverine and even Magneto, Deadpool concocts lethal solutions tailored to each adversary. His arsenal includes ant-sized explosives for the Avengers, a carbonadium blade to counter Wolverine's healing factor, and even an acidic jello cube to take down Magneto. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, the culminating takedown was when Professor X attempts to shut down Deadpool's mind, only to suffer a fatal brain hemorrhage, unable to cope with the reality that they're all mere pieces of fiction. And number 3 is X-23. Here we have an intense showdown between X-23 and the notorious Dr. Xander Rice. Picture this, there's an imminent explosion and a choice between personal fulfillment and seeking revenge. X-23 faces a momentous decision as the countdown to the facility's detonation ticks away. Rice, responsible for inflicting unimaginable torment during Laura's creation, gets the tables turned on him. In a visceral display of completely justified rage, X-23 unleashes a brutal takedown with her iconic adamantium claws, choosing to make every remaining second count. It's a showdown fueled by vengeance and a raw personal vendetta. Despite the temptation to seek revenge, X-23 walks away unscathed as the clock strikes zero. This clash wasn't about physical combat, it's a clash of morality and personal resolution. A display of unyielding strength and determination to move forward, leaving Rice in the wreckage of his own creation. At number 2 is Punisher versus Stilt-Man. Here we've got the Punisher, a vigilante known for his no-holds-bar approach to taking down the bad guys. So in this particular instance, he's facing off against Stilt-Man, who, well, he's a bit more on the obscure side of villains, known for, you guessed it, his telescopic legs. Now, the Punisher doesn't mess around. In Punisher War Journal number 1, he decides to make a serious statement by aiming and firing a not-so-light anti-tank weapon straight at Stilt-Man's groin. Yeah, it's a whole new level of brutal. And despite that explosive hit, only the top half of Stilt-Man survives, while the rest, well, let's just say it's not feeling too great. But wait, it doesn't end there. Things get even wilder. At Stilt-Man's farewell gathering, the whole scene takes a turn for the worse, as the Punisher, disguised with a fake mustache, sets off explosives hidden around the place, creating chaos and taking down a whole bar full of liquored up villains. It's not your typical hero move, right? This intense, savage, and, well, pretty brutal if you ask me. And it's just scratching the surface of the sheer madness that went down in that clash. At number 1 is Zeus versus the Hulk. The Hulk is known for his incredible strength, but he decides to take on the Greek pantheon, specifically challenging Zeus. But here's the thing, Zeus is on a whole other level. He's not just a god, he's a heavyweight, and he wastes no time in showing Hulk who's boss. In a thunderous bolt, Zeus smashes the Hulk, shattering his ribcage. The Hulk, resilient as he is no match for Zeus's power. But here's the kicker. Zeus could easily end the Hulk with a snap, yet he chooses not to. Why? Well, I mean, he's got his reasons, declaring that he'll fulfill the Hulk's request to be taken down by a hand for his blasphemy. It's a clash of ideologies as Zeus rejects Hulk's sacrifice plan, stating it as the wrong religion. Zeus leaves Hulk severely injured, sending him flying, teaching him a lesson that'll linger for days. The clash isn't about physical strength, but about conflicting the beliefs and the repercussions of the divine. And the repercussions of challenging the divine. As always, if there's a brutal hero that you think I've missed here today, feel free to let me know down in the comments.
Number 10, Blue Marvel. Marvel has several powerhouse characters who are effectively its answers to Superman, and one of those heroes is Hyperion. Ever since the first incarnation of the character debuted in Avengers number 69, Hyperion has been one of the most powerful figures in the Marvel multiverse in all of his forms. But none of those forms have been as destructive or dangerous as King Hyperion, a reality-traveling threat who destroyed entire worlds and their most powerful heroes before making his way into the main Marvel universe. But King Hyperion didn't stand a hope in hell against the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel Adam Brashear is one of the best Marvel superheroes, one of my favorites and one of the absolutely undefeatable. He's taken on all the Avengers' entire alien armadas, he has lifted a meteor the size of Arkansas and guided it away, and he's uppercutted the hell out of the Ultimate Universe Hulk. Hyperion says he's defeated Blue Marvels before, but he hasn't faced Earth 616's. While he put Blue Marvel down initially, when Hyperion threatened the innocent bystanders nearby, Blue Marvel found a new strength. Letting loose in a way he hadn't before, it took 5 blows before Hyperion was out cold and Blue Marvel stood over him victorious. Number 9, Thor and Hyperion. With the end of the multiverse staring down the heroes of the 616 Marvel Universe across the Jonathan Hickman run on Avengers and New Avengers, Thor and a handful of other heroes like Hyperion, Starbrand, Nightmask, Ex Nihilo, and Abyss ventured across the multiverse to confront the Beyonders, responsible for the collapse of the Marvel multiverse. Now, wielding the hammer of Thor, that's with 2 R's, which can only be used by those that are considered unworthy, Thor went into battle alongside the others, giving everything he had and helping bring down just 2 of the Beyonders at the cost of his arm in New Avengers number 32. Now, after facing just 2 of the Beyonders, only Thor and Hyperion survived the battle. Unfortunately, that battle ended just for another to begin, as an entire army of Beyonders descended upon them. In one of the most badass moments in Marvel Comics, realizing that Thor can no longer wield Thor with 2R's hammer because he has proven himself worthy once again, Thor and Hyperion laugh together and race each other to Valhalla as they throw themselves into this one final battle against an enemy that they have no hope of defeating. Number 8. Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau is an insanely powerful cosmic hero, and being one of the heroes to hold the title of Captain Marvel, we would expect no less. Way back in Avengers number 248, a battle was taking place between the Avengers and various Olympians. One of the main fights taking place was between Zeus, a sky father on par with Odin himself, and the god of thunder himself, Thor. Now, to be quite frank, Zeus thrashed Thor like he was a badly behaved little boy. Zeus had Thor down and is about to literally wipe him from this plane of existence when out of nowhere, Monica Rambeau shows up. Shooting Zeus with a little blast of energy that cuts his arm, she orders him to back off of Thor or she will do much worse. Now Zeus, obviously not seeing her as a threat, fires off a lightning bolt that simply phases right through her living light body, doing absolutely nothing to her. So, in retaliation, she tells him the gloves are off and flies in, hitting Zeus with a blast that lights up the entirety of Olympus. And while Zeus was not defeated, Thor makes note of the fact that Monica hurt him more than any mortal had ever done before, and it shows. Number 7. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is easily one of the strongest of Marvel's cosmic heroes. He can do some absolutely insane things, and he has had some massively impressive fights. But one of the ones that I think shows just how powerful he is would be his first ever fight against Knull, the symbiote god. At the start of 2018's Guardians of the Galaxy series by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw, the Silver Surfer was swallowed in a black hole that transported him billions of years into the past, landing him in Silver Surfer Black. At the beginning of time, Silver Surfer faced Knull in battle when the symbiote god was just beginning to rise in power, and it was one hell of a fight. Knull proved to be an extremely difficult opponent, which we know he is from his fight against literally all of Earth's heroes. Silver Surfer was going to the extent of his power trying to defeat Knull in combat, and Knull is still getting the best of him using All Black the Necro Sword and his other symbiotes. With Surfer on the ropes facing off against the God of Darkness, he uses the last little bits of his power cosmic that he has to create an entirely new sun point blank in front of Knull's creepy little face. While he knows it doesn't defeat Knull permanently, it does defeat him for the time being, and it's just super awesome. Number 6. Superman. In Superman number 127, we are introduced to Titano the Super Ape. Now he started off as a smart ape named Toto that was sent into space, but then was accidentally exposed to radiation from 2 colliding meteors. Now this, for some reason, grew Toto into a massive King Kong style ape who is now named Titano, and it also gave Titano the ability to fire rays of green kryptonite out of his eyes. I don't know. Obviously that is a big problem for Superman, who couldn't really get in close to this super cryptovision ape. But luckily, Superman's girlfriend is able to trick Titano into wearing lead sunglasses that stop the kryptonite rays, at which point Superman just picked up the giant super ape and threw him back through time. Superman chucked his super monkey through time back to the prehistoric era where he could interact with dinosaurs. Yes, Superman is so strong that he can literally throw things through time. He's also thrown Jimmy Olsen through time before, but who cares? This is a giant ape. Number 5. Franklin Richards. While he may not be considered entirely a cosmic level superhero, Franklin Richards, the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, is destined to become a key factor in the cosmic landscape of the Marvel Universe. His power to warp reality is so great that he has created entire pocket universes. Now in one reality, appearing in Fantastic Four Volume 1 number 604, Franklin appeared as an adult, and we saw a glimpse of just how powerful he can be. In the story, a grown Franklin and Valeria Richards worked together with their grandfather Nathaniel Richards to travel into the past to influence their younger counterparts and to help fight against the Mad Celestials that were threatening the entire world. Galactus was called on by the Fantastic Four to help, and although he brought down one Celestial, the others combined their power and were too much for Galactus to handle. Enter Franklin. Restoring Galactus and imbuing him with enough cosmic energy to stand up to the Celestials, Franklin turned Galactus into his own herald, defeating the Celestials and then being humble enough to give up that power after the fight was over. All the other heroes could do was just look up into the sky and watch in awe. It was actually kinda epic. Number 4. John Stewart Green Lantern. A Green Lantern's power ring is capable of almost anything, but even it has its limits. However, that didn't stop John Stewart from attempting to recreate an entire solar system in Green Lantern number 26. When reflecting on the destruction of the planet Zanshi and its solar system, which is an event that John blames himself for, the hero tried his damnedest to try and bring the world back with just his ring. He broke past the programming of his ring and got pretty damn close to completely rebuilding the entire solar system. Unfortunately, such a construct was too much even with John's iron will, but the fact that he got so close shows how far a power ring can really go when effort is put into it. But let's try one even more than that, shall we? Yeah. Number 3. Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan was possibly the greatest Green Lantern ever, according to the comics at least. But in the 90s, that kinda changed. After the death of Superman and the subsequent reign of the Supermen, Coast City, Hal Jordan's home, was destroyed. This completely changed the Lantern, and he completely broke the programming of his own power ring to revive the city. He created the entire city's layout with all of its buildings, parks, streets, everything. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the same. It needed life. So Hal went completely against the Green Lantern's rules and made constructs of all the once living inhabitants of Coast City, millions of people. When the Guardians of the Universe tried to stop him, he completely snapped. He went off the handle, ending the lives of every Green Lantern and naming himself Parallax. Hal became a threat to the whole DC universe for like a decade before eventually sacrificing himself. Sure, he went bad, but he absolutely did not hold back against anyone. Number 2. Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apocalypse but adopted by the gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none, and in one of his many displays of pure power, he completely wipes out his father. When Darkseid came to Earth, heroes like the Atom and an empowered Jimmy Olsen fought him until a boom tube opened up and Orion came out. The heroes stood aside and let Orion fight Darkseid on his own, and he absolutely wrecked the guy in one slog of a fight. At the end of the fight, after beating down on Darkseid to the level of wiping out entire city blocks, Orion wiped out Darkseid by plunging his hand straight into his father's chest, grabbing his fiery heart and ripping it out clean, leaving Darkseid as a pile of charred bones. And finally, in at number 1 today, the Sentry. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle the Hulk was sent to Sakaar in by the Illuminati at the beginning blows up, wiping out Hulk's new family and the lives of millions of individuals on Sakaar. This pushes the Hulk into a whole new level of anger, which is directed squarely at the Illuminati. So he headed to Earth with his war sworn. When he got to Earth, after quickly stopping at the moon to wreck Black Bolt, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated, and when that time limit stopped, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, and the Ghost Rider, all while saving innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them only as he sought justice, not to end lives. Well, the Illuminati had one last-ditch effort to stop the Hulk: the Sentry. Coming in against probably the only being who could take it, Sentry unleashed almost everything he had against the Hulk, leveling city blocks and causing a massive column of fire. These two went blow for blow over and over until they both used up so much energy that they reverted back to their regular human forms, with a depowered Bruce Banner getting in a final punch to bring Sentry down.
In at 10, Hulk. Okay, we all know the Hulk, and we all love him. So much so that even suggesting that MCU Captain Marvel can beat MCU Hulk apparently deserves 2 years of hate, even if it was my second video. Thanks, Sasha. However, the Hulk has defeated a god, which is no easy feat. In the first Avengers movie, which is the time I'll be referring to, hence why it's at the top, because you're gonna be mad at me, Hulk beat Loki down so hard that even years later, come Thor Ragnarok, Loki was still scared of him, which is pretty damn awesome. You know the scene. It's iconic. Hulk picks up Loki, then smashes him around a million different ways. Actually, it's just one, by smashing him on the ground over and over again, but it's still hilarious and one of the best scenes in the entire MCU. Hulk beating down Loki is such an iconic moment now, and even before this, he punched Thor in the face and knocked him across the room, so it's safe to say that Hulk deserves to be on this list, even if it's the MCU version that I got hate for mentioning before. And at 9, Batman. Now, while this isn't an instance of Batman beating an actual god, someone who, I guess, in our religions is considered a god, rather he beat a god that is considered a god, or at the very least god adjacent in his universe, Darkseid. During the Final Crisis storyline from 2008, Batman uses a Radion bullet to mortally wound Darkseid, while Darkseid in turn kills Batman with his Omega beams. Although physically bested and appearing dead, Darkseid's dying essence was still dragging all of reality into nothingness along with it. So even though Batman broke his one rule and created a bullet that could literally kill a god, it wasn't really enough. And then Batman gets gotten by the Omega Beam, and Superman is left at the end of creation and has to literally sing Darkseid apart. Not even kidding. The last of Superman's super breath was used to sing the remaining essence of Darkseid out of existence. I wish I wasn't being serious. This sounds like either the best or the worst episode of Glee ever. It's the only episode that I would watch, if I'm being totally honest. And at 8, Black Bolt. Speaking of voices tearing people apart, we have Black Bolt, the Dragonborn of the Marvel Universe. Another character who didn't exactly defeat a god that we know of, but rather a god that is considered a god in his universe. They say that when Black Bolt came face to face with Apocalypse, he murdered the god with his voice, shouted him apart. Actually, a simple sound was enough to do the man in. Black Bolt has also killed nearly all the Celestials and torn apart space-time with those damn pipes of his. Guess there's more to this tuning fork of a human than meets the eye, or I guess I should say inhuman. I'd never want to get on this guy's bad side, especially like even if we just got into an argument. That would probably be the death of me. Like he would say something extremely controversial and I'd just be like, yeah man, totally. Yeah, just so I don't have to fight him. Or maybe I should say the death of me. No? Too much? Because like, you know, he'd explode my head with sound. So it would be the death of me, but I would also... Okay, moving on. And at 7, Aquaman. With Aquaman being the butt of so many superhero jokes, you wouldn't really expect him to have that many big bad tangles. Maybe a cuttlefish here, or maybe a blobfish is acting out of line there, but that sort of underestimating is actually what got the son of Poseidon's handed to him by the flying fishmonger. Going by the name of Triton, not Percy Jackson unfortunately, the son of Olympic god Poseidon challenged Aquaman to a one-on-one battle. He didn't expect much of a fight, I guess, which just makes me question why he challenged him in the first place. But Triton, due to his arrogance, got his rear presented to him on a silver platter with a side of cheese slices and crackers to boot. In fact, Triton got his beat so bad that Poseidon himself stepped in to save him and then punished Aquaman for absolutely destroying his pathetic little boy. Like, this is some serious rich parent level of bull here. Like, imagine you're on a sports team and you beat the other team so bad that one of the parents comes in and yells at you and then kicks you off your team. That's basically what happened to Aquaman, and that's hilarious. That's not gonna help with the jokes. And at 6, Thor. I know that Thor is a god, but that doesn't mean that I can't count him on this list because he's still a superhero in the Marvel comics. So you know what? It's good enough for me, and for some reason Marvel agrees with me, putting him up against various foes like Olympus cage matches for us to bet on. One that we've seen multiple times, and I mean multiple times, is Thor versus Hercules. In the blue corner, we have the god of lightning, the lord of thunder, the son of Odin, and the mother of dragons, Thor! And in the red corner, we have the god of strength, son of Zeus, and probably not Hera's son, hence why she sent demons after him, at least in the non-Disney adaptation, whose name is also wrong, Hercules! That, for some reason, despite being the god of strength, cannot seem to win against Thor when he uses lightning. Yeah, that's right. Somehow the god of strength and the god of thunder are fairly evenly matched physically, but when Thor starts pulling out some lightning on the son of Zeus, whose father literally wields a lightning bolt, he can't seem to get it up. You know what I really want to see? Thor versus Bonesaw. Bonesaw is ready! Halfway through into number 5, Spectre. Look, I get that the Spectre is an immortal mythical presence that doesn't really have any decent weakness, however, he does possess a mortal man in order to actually be able to do his thing, so he counts for this list. That's right, deal with it. Especially when the Spirit of Ultimate Vengeance fought off Shazam, who is similar to Darkseid and Apocalypse in the sense that he's seen as a god in this universe, or at least god adjacent, since, you know, he's also basically invincible. I guess you could also say that maybe Superman fits that description, but literally anyone who fights him somehow gets their hands on kryptonite as if it's available at every corner drugstore like plutonium was supposed to be in 1985. If you understand that reference, we can be friends. However, you know, the Spectre is literally a spirit that will just find a new host whenever his old one kicks the bucket, so yeah, it's safe to say that this guy could defeat basically anyone if he tried hard enough and was willing to burn through enough vessels. In it for Deadpool. Deadpool, for all of his issues, is certainly a resilient fellow, and shares quite a bit of his character with various different other characters in the Marvel Universe. One of which is that he has a fascination for tricks and impersonations, like Loki. Ironically, Mr. Wilson decided to try and impersonate Thor on multiple occasions. And you know, Thor already has to deal with that kind of BS at home, so when he sees Wade doing it, he isn't happy. And while this may have happened in a non-canon comic, technically it happened in one universe. Since in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe Volume 12, Deadpool uses Pym particles to enlarge Mjolnir and use it to kill Thor, which has got to be the most brutal kind of taking your own medicine ever. Like, imagine getting squished by your own hammer that only a couple other people in the entire universe can even move. That's a serious kick in the balls, especially because it's Deadpool. Like, you lost to Deadpool. That sucks. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Wonder Woman. Do I really need to tell you which god Wonder Woman has defeated? I mean, like, it's kind of obvious. She also had a whole movie about it. The god of war, Kratos, has gone against wait, what? That's the wrong god of war? Oh yes, right. Wonder Woman and Ares have gone head to head multiple times over the various decades of comics. Ares is basically the Joker to Wonder Woman's Batman, at least in my opinion. And honestly, it's not as fair as one might think. Sure, Ares is the god of war, but Wonder Woman still kicks his ass from here to Sunday, especially after they got rid of that one weakness that I'm pretty sure spoke more about the writer than the character. No matter what, Wonder Woman has still beat Ares, who is a god of war, and therefore belongs on this list, even if it was a fairly obvious number. She also cleaved his head in two at one point, so it's safe to say that if she wasn't on this list, the same thing would happen to me. Either from her or the comments. Penultimately, in at number 2, Sentry. Sentry's an absolute powerhouse, so it's no surprise that he's fought and beaten a god, but how he did it is even better. Sentry used to be a part of Norman Osborn's Avengers, who went to Asgard in an attempt to lay siege and claim it, because, you know, it's Norman Osborn's Avengers. However, the Marvel version of the Greek god of war didn't like that idea, so after he learned of Osborn's intentions, he came down to kill the Green Goblin. But Ares did not anticipate Sentry's absolute monster arms, even when Sentry picked him up and tore him in half. This man tore a Greek god in half. He absolutely obliterated the god of war without breaking a sweat. If that doesn't show you the sheer power of Sentry and how overpowered Marvel thinks that Superman is, nothing will. Nothing will show you. You're a lost cause at that point. He tore Ares in half. What? Finally, in at number 1, Superman. Superman is basically a god in the DC universe, like I said earlier, but not only is he near godlike in the DC universe, but he's also defeated multiple godlike entities across his decades of comic appearances, including Darkseid after withstanding one of his Omega beams, which is absolutely insane, and Doomsday, who, whenever he gets defeated, gets resurrected, and then cannot be killed in that same way. So you'd have to come up with new ways to kill him every time, which is freaking ridiculous, and eventually Doomsday will just become invincible and everyone will die. I'm just saying, okay? I'm just saying. Superman is also basically unkillable if the enemy plays fair, but let's be honest, when would they do that? They're bad guys. It's what they do. But assuming the world ends up running out of kryptonite, we're also all screwed. We saw what happened with Injustice. Imagine that, but no chance of stopping him, alright? Yeah. Exactly. Also, how specific is the Doomsday thing? Like, does it have to be like, oh, you stabbed him here, so you have to move 2 millimeters over to the left to actually be able to kill him again? Or is it like, oh, you shot him with like a bazooka, so you can't ever shoot him again? And like, does it happen, like, is it every other time that he's died you can't kill him that same way, or is it just the previous one? I don't know.
Number 10, speaking of the MCU universe, we're gonna have to go to their version of Civil War, which was a loose adaptation of the 2006 comic arc of the same name. In that comic, it's centered around the idea of pro versus anti-registration sides after a disaster that caused the death of many civilians. The film would center largely around the idea that there should be superhero accords, so kind of the same concept, but also detoured a bit onto Steve Rogers and his need to keep Bucky Barnes safe. That was a huge part of that movie. It was a lot of why he was anti-accord. It was. This film would culminate in the reveal, for Tony at least, that the Winter Soldier, aka the aforementioned Bucky Barnes, was the person who had killed his parents. This causes him to go off the deep end because he was not the most stable person in this movie. He would end up battling full out with the Winter Soldier and Captain America, and we would get actually an admittedly very cool fight scene where the two teamed up to take him down. This climactic battle would result in a moment that in my theater at least actually elicited audible gasps from the audience. It's the moment where at the end, Captain America brings down his shield right down the center of Iron Man's chest, right where his arc reactor used to be, which a few films earlier would have killed him, and even then leaves him there in the cold, in that hideout with no power. It was an intense moment. Defeated, and he lost his friends. I mean, although he had been imprisoning them, it was not the best look for Tony in either Civil War. This movie would divide fans into pro Iron Man and pro Cap camps for quite a while. Number 9, Original Sin, aka Original Retcons. This was a Marvel event from 2014, wherein it was revealed that there were secrets in the Marvel Universe, original sins, because we were playing upon the biblical allegory here. So, what was Iron Man's original sin? Well, it was revealed that he had tampered with the gamma bomb that had caused Bruce Banner to become the Hulk. And when Bruce figures this out, he is of course enraged. So he manages to get a hold of some extremist tech so that he can hold on to his Bruce Banner consciousness when he transforms into the Hulk, so that he can go and confront Tony properly. And confront him he does, taking out his Hulkbuster armor in literally one punch. Just one punch. He was the One Punch Man. Tony survives the fight by running away to get more armor. A loss or a strategic retreat? You decide. Number 8, Thor. After the comic book Civil War, a lot of heroes had some strong feelings towards Tony. I mean, Thor ended up being cloned by Reed in this arc. Just they needed a big, heavy muscle guy on their team, so they cloned Thor. Nobody likes being cloned without their consent. I mean, Tony was creating alternate dimension prisons. It was just not going well. After this, him and Thor would end up getting into it. And it's important to remember here that Thor is indeed a god, and Tony is a guy in some really souped up armor, which he actually has to remind Thor of because Thor is dismantling him so thoroughly, throwing him up into the air, ripping his mask off, just pieces coming off everywhere. He needs to be calmed down because that could have gone pretty intensely. He made his point though, and for many fans they felt it was a take that Tony moment, because after Civil War there was a lot of take that Tony, despite the fact that reviews said that the comic was balanced and nuanced, which I think if it had been there wouldn't have been as much take that Tony. Number 7, Contest of Champions 2. Let them fight. There's something about that plot that just captures the imagination of fans. Just pitted together, normally on an island-style location and forced to duke it out. Well, this happened in Contest of Champions 2, and Iron Man was pitted against mutant powerhouse Psylocke. Now, at first they were pretty evenly matched because her psychic attacks weren't really working on him because his armor could see through them because she tried some psychological tricks. However, ultimately, because she had nanites inside of her, she was able to deliver this flurry of rapid-fire blows that were also backed up by her psionic abilities, and that took him out. If you're gonna use the Goku punch strategy, then you know, the other person gotta be prepared, and sometimes your armor just can't take that, and this was one of those times. Number 6, Rogue. This comes to us from X-Men Legacy 267. This was during the whole Avengers versus X-Men arc lead up surrounding everything. This is where the Phoenix Force and Hope Summers were viewed as the saviors of mutant kind. However, by other heroes it was viewed as more of a threat because, I mean, the Phoenix Force, pretty dangerous. Cap and Iron Man would go hard trying to capture Hope Summers, and this would lead them into many conflicts with the X-Men. Iron Man actually goes to Xavier's school, institute, Jean Grey's, whatever we're calling it at that point, and finds himself having to take on Rogue. And even though he points out that he's beaten her once before, she says that that was a different time. And then he also makes the mistake of attacking Gambit, which sends Rogue into a berserker-like rage, and she channels the She-Hulk's powers and just literally punches right through him. She just pummels him till all his armor is just bits on the ground. It's a good thing these armors are durable, / sometimes he's not actually in them, because otherwise he'd be dead several times over, which we're gonna get to later on. Dead Tony, that is. Don't mess with Rogue, or apparently more importantly, Don't mess with Gambit. Number 5, the Winter Soldier. That's right, Bucky Barnes gets to make this list twice, but this time from the comic book universe. The return of Bucky Barnes was a huge event in comic book fandom because for a time he had been viewed as one of the sacred deaths, one of those characters that was not coming back. However, things change, and his return arc was pretty well received. In Captain America 33, which followed Civil War, well, he was out to get some revenge on Tony because at the end of Civil War, Captain America was assassinated on the courthouse steps. So Bucky felt that this was Iron Man's fault, using the whole if you two hadn't been fighting and this hadn't happened, he wouldn't have been there kind of logic. So the two would get into it, and ultimately Bucky would get the upper hand by pushing him into a set of power lines that would overload his suit, which, I mean, you would think that would happen a lot more often. I feel like I should be taking notes. Bucky Barnes is all the simple tricks. Number 4, What If Spider-Man Back in Black, which for a while I was like, that sounds like an album title, and then I remembered that it was AC/DC. I redeemed myself. This What If takes us back to, again, some events from Civil War. After Peter revealed his identity at Tony's behest, it did not go well for him, and Aunt May ended up getting shot. Well, on this What If, it's Mary Jane who gets shot, and Spider-Man goes right off the deep end, even though in main canon he was willing to sacrifice his marriage and memories of being with her to get Aunt May back. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. We're talking about Back in Black. In this comic, he decides that he's gonna put that black suit back on, he's gonna go get revenge, and he's out to kill. Well, he ends up getting into a fight with Iron Man, and he actually puts his hand over the repulsor ray, which causes it to reflect back on Tony. This takes him out, puts him down for the count, and Peter can go off on his killing spree. Just everybody and all the realities, Civil War. Number 3, Superior Iron Man. Ah yes, evil Tony Stark, who was around after the Axis event, which was an event where you saw heroes and villains swapped. And everyone went back to normal except for Tony, who not everybody was aware was evil Tony for a little bit. Well, in issue 9 of the Superior Iron Man, he would end up battling it out with Pepper Potts, who was in some Iron Man armor of her own, which was deemed inferior Iron Man armor. However, despite this, she was able to get the armor off of Superior Tony Iron Man with an electromagnetic pulse, which was pretty satisfying, just that she knew all the kind of little secrets to dismantle him. Pepper's put up with a lot over the years. So much more in the comics. So much more. Number 2, Avengers X Sanction, aka Iron Man fights Cable, and you know you want to see that. Cable was definitely there when it came down to protecting Hope Summers, even though he was being overwhelmed by the techno-organic virus inside his body, but I mean that hasn't stopped him before and it doesn't stop him here. He was actually able to defeat Tony by using some future Stark technology that Tony had not invented yet, which of course he uses to mock Tony with to no end. He's even able to corrupt and overwhelm Tony's suit and then punches him right up into the Red Hulk. It's just never a great time to be Tony. Definitely not on this list. It was pretty cool design for Cable with this, with the reactor right in the center, his metal arm, just, you know, all the Cableness. And finally, in at number 1. I think you were waiting for it. I think you know what it is. That's right, it's Civil War 2. The event's so nice they did it twice. Here we have a lot of the same story beats being covered, but instead we have Iron Man in the role of Cap and Captain Marvel Carol Danvers in the role of Iron Man. This one would center around the Minority Report dilemma. There should be stop crimes before they happen. Is that ethical or right? Well, after War Machine, who was at the time Carol's boyfriend, gets fridged, she is 100% for we need to stop all these crimes before they even happen, and she is off. This ultimately ends up with a giant climactic battle where she beats Tony to death. This is a moment that would cause a lot of contention, especially because there was a decent amount of contention surrounding Carol at this point in time anyway. So it was very quickly dealt with in the comics with, oh no, but Tony had an AI, and then that AI built a body, and we can all just pretend that that AI is Tony.
At number 10, it was just an accident. In one event, Spider-Man accidentally caused the demise of Agent Charlemagne. She put herself in harm's way, intercepting a blow meant for Wolverine, leading to her tragic demise. This incident weighed heavily on Spider-Man's conscience, leaving a lasting impact on him. Despite encounters where he unintentionally caused demises, Charlemagne's loss affected him profoundly, marking the first time he ever felt directly responsible for taking a life. Spider-Man struggled with guilt and remorse, grappling with the weight of his actions, unable to forgive himself for what happened. This experience added a layer of complexity to his journey, highlighting the emotional toll and ethical dilemmas heroes face when confronting the consequences of their actions. At number 9 is his fight against Firelord. Firelord is a cosmic being who's held his own against some heavy hitters like Thor, the X-Men, and even went toe-to-toe with the Phoenix Force. But in one instance, he clashed with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 270. Spider-Man had a different approach, opting to outsmart rather than overpower. He led Fire-Lord on a wild chase through the city, trying unconventional methods to take him out, like luring him into a building set for demolition, or a gas station to explode and exploit his powers. Despite the relentless effort, none of these ploys managed to take Fire-Lord down. The most unexpected strategy of all was simply to, well, punch him a lot. Spider-Man's persistence paid off, and through a frenzied attack, he inadvertently triumphed. So much so that the Avengers had to actually step in and intervene, pulling Spider-Man off of Fire-Lord's body. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Back in Black story, where Spider-Man's shift back to his black costume marks a darker turn. Discovering Kingpin's role in Aunt May's assassination attempt, Peter Parker unleashes his hidden strength. He abandons his usual wit, publicly confronting and absolutely brutalizing Kingpin, revealing the immense power he often restrains against his weaker foes. Spider-Man goes as far as threatening Kingpin's life if he ever endangers the Parkers again, a stance he takes to the extreme in a separate reality explored in the What If series. This narrative showcased Spider-Man's capacity for extreme actions when pushed to his limit, emphasizing the consequences of his unparalleled strength when gone unchecked. At number 7 is the iconic Superior Spidey vs. Scorpion. During the Superior Spider-Man comic arc, where Dr. Octopus seizes control of Spider-Man's body and unleashes a devastating punch that cleanly knocks the jaw off of Scorpion. This punch, almost effortless for Peter Parker, shocks Doc Ock, revealing the immense power Spider-Man had concealed this whole time. It's a stark revelation that Spider-Man had been restraining his immense strength all along. It dawns on Dr. Octopus that Peter Parker was holding back in their battles, a realization that astounds him. The notion that Spider-Man in his kindness or self-restraint had refrained from using his full force against adversaries left Doc Ock surprised at the level of power at Peter Parker's disposal. At number 6 is Morlun. In 2001's The Amazing Spider-Man, a grim brawl unfurled between Spider-Man and the villain Morlun. Unlike his usual foes, Morlun fed on spider essence, making this encounter particularly dangerous for Spidey. But aware of Morlun's weakness to radiation, Spidey weaponized his own tainted spider essence against him, inflicting a potentially lethal dose. Spider-Man hesitated when Morlun begged for mercy, only for the villain's minion to swiftly finish him off. Though Spider-Man didn't deal the final blow here, he purposefully brought Morlun to the edge of demise. Not only did this arc introduce intriguing new powers to Spider-Man, but also showcase a darker, more ruthless side of the hero, revealing a brutal aspect of Spider-Man's character which hinted at a threshold he teetered on, where mercy tangled with the urge for justice. At number 5 is the Grim Hunt. In this saga, the Grim Hunt, Spider faced the Karvinoff family's wrath in their ruthless quest targeting spider-powered heroes. Unlike the typical Spider-Man tales, this story gets intense. You see, when he's pushed to his limit, he unleashes a darker side, and in a shockingly violent act, Spidey uses his unique adhesive abilities to brutally retaliate against a Karvinoff member for eliminating his clone Kane, tearing off the villain's face. Yeah, this narrative marked a departure from Spidey's usual moral code, showcasing a grittier, more aggressive side of our friendly neighborhood hero, revealing how far he'd go and push beyond his limits. At number 4, tossing tanks and trucks. In the heat of battle against Green Goblin, Ultimate Spider-Man did something extraordinary, lifting an 18-wheeler truck and bringing it down on the Green Goblin's face. At just 16, Peter showcased incredible strength, proving that age is no limit to powers. Later, facing the Absorbing Man, Spider-Man intercepted a hurled truck, showcasing his swift reflexes and superhuman strength by stopping an entire armored vehicle mid-air. Even when facing tanks and mercenaries, Spidey didn't hold back. In a high-stakes rescue mission, he hoisted a tank above his head and smashed it down. While Spider-Man's usual strength hovers around 20 tons, moments like these reveal his ability to push beyond that, especially when lives are on the line. At number 3, benching entire buildings. In Spider-Man Final Chapter, he's holding up the entire Daily Bugle, not for himself, but for everybody else's safety. And that's no easy feat too, especially when the city he's trying to protect starts turning against him. Plus, Aunt May's on a ticking time bomb, and so talk about the pressure. Here's the thing about Spidey. Even when the world is on his shoulders, he doesn't buckle. He pushes through, stops that bomb, and keeps the bugle from becoming a pile of rubble. In a separate issue, Dr. Kirk Connors aimed to use a contraption within New York's sewers to rid himself of the reptilian transformation. However, unbeknownst to him, a lethal trap awaited beneath Penn Station. As Spider-Man attempted to reason with the Lizard, chaos ensued. Consumed by his primal instincts, the Lizard brought Penn Station crashing down, burying Spider-Man under its colossal weight. Aware that even the mighty Thor would falter beneath such an overwhelming burden, Peter grappled with the weight, his muscles straining against the impossible load. Yet against all odds, determination surged within him, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He defied the impossible, summoning the strength to lift the collapsed station, liberating himself from the wreckage's grasp. And lastly in this entry is in If This Be My Destiny, Spider-Man faced a monumental challenge, an entire underwater facility collapsing atop of him. Weakened by a prior fight, he struggled immensely, unable to lift the colossal weight off of himself, submerged underwater. Faced with Aunt May's life on the line, Spider-Man almost gave up before remembering how he failed to save his Uncle Ben. Unwilling to let it happen again with Aunt May, Peter resolves to fight on and lifts the giant mechanism to free himself, summoning every ounce of strength to hoist the structure, facing excruciating pain in the process. At number 2 is Juggernaut. In the showdown titled Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, Spider-Man faced a real tough time. It was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. You see, nothing Spidey tried seemed to make a dent in stopping that big tough dude. The Juggernaut's on a mission to nab Madame Web, thinking that her powers will give him an edge against the X-Men. But Web gets the heads up and rings Spidey for help. The thing is, it's not smooth sailing. Spider-Man tries all of his moves, but nothing sticks. The Juggernaut is just too strong and relentless. He gets dangerously close to taking Madame Web out for good, and that's when Spider-Man goes all in. He doesn't hold back anymore. Leading the Juggernaut to a construction zone, he cooks up a plan and then bam, wraps him in wet cement. Goes to show that sometimes it's not about brute strength, but about how smart and persistent you are. And in that moment, Spidey proved that determination and quick thinking can win even the toughest battles. And at number 1 is his fight against Green Goblin. When Spider-Man faced a devastating loss of Gwen Stacy, he vowed revenge against the Green Goblin. Fueled by emotions, Spidey nearly succumbs to the urge and ends the villain's life, thrashing him around with a barrage of punches. Yet amidst the chaos, he pauses, realizing his core principles. Spidey refuses to compromise his heroism by resorting to unaliving. Despite the intense desire for justice, Spider-Man confronts the Goblin, opting to defeat rather than execute. Unfortunately, Goblin had other plans concerning his glider, and I'm pretty sure we all know the rest. Spider-Man, relying on his heightened senses, narrowly avoids a fatal blow from the villain's glider, ending Green Goblin's reign without compromising his own moral code.